I was gonna say that.
It was the irrigation.
What were they irrigating?
They're long.
They're long.
It was a brand new house that was built. They were using.
So where are we with respect to the recommendation of our level 4 that we have in right now? Remind me of what level 3 is, by the way. That's level 3.
For what?
For
Drought.
water
Our ban.
conservation,
Our restrictions.
our restrictions.
Water use restrictions.
Our restrictions right now is no residential outside use
Right,
at all.
right. So if we go down one level, what would that be?
There are communities that pick sides of the streets. And so it's an alternating day thing. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you get to water, and on
Even even houses on houses get to do it on certain days. So it's a breakdown of the community. So in theory, having the outside use ability.
One of the other reasons that we went with a level 4 was because it gave the select board basically you could implement it and take it out as needed. That was why we went with a level 4 as opposed to a level 3, where it gives you a set time frame for that drought status.
Right.
So as with the level 4, you can say implementing a water ban or taking it out as frequently as you want. That was the other reason why we went with that.
Well, we waited until we were in moderate drought
Yes.
to implement it.
And the situation has improved.
Right.
And we're, like Dylan said, we're on the cusp of being normal. We're still well behind both 19 and 20.
Correct.
As far as annual rainfall.
But that could be the new
But-
normal.
Do we have a handle of what the status of well 3 is?
No, we are, well, 3 is not.
I know it's offline, there's no way to tell if it's
No,
it's been
No,
we don't have any.
differently adversely.
we don't have
impacted.
any.
We don't have any.
mechanism.
Which is 2 and 4, we have a
Wait,
good feel, but well 3.
We don't have any automation to measure the depth of the wells like we do at 2 and 4. There's
Right.
nothing out there. It's just a pump that turns on and off. So
Okay.
So I guess I'm looking for that. Well, should we leave our level 4 in place or should we leave it?
That's what you think? You're the guy running the water, so.
yeah, I mean it's a tough call because I don't want to have you
Well,
remove it.
Let's leave
or-
it now and revisit it next.
Revisit it next meeting.
Sure,
Yeah.
next meeting.
Sure,
Right.
that's perfect. If we get some significant rain, a couple more inches, we'll be caught up to 2020. As long as October and November aren't terrible, we'll be fine.
We may be able to get a better bead on what the fall is going to be like in the long range forecast. Someone could research that just to add that to the decision.
Okay,
making.
so we'll put it on the agenda again for the next meeting.
And I think on the issue of metering irrigation systems, I think we will have to have a public hearing on, because we were looking at potentially raising the trash fee again, and now we had a 3-year plan
Right.
on that and on the water sewer.
Right.
So we might as well just fold that into one public hearing.
Although we already announced all of those trash and
Right,
sewer
those
rates,
those
correct?
things have been voted into effect, we're just taking the time to do it, so I don't.
Right, but I think we left the impression
I
that
don't
we
think
were.
we hear that.
Well, it's going to be a segmentation. You're right. We were going to segment it over the next 3 years to
Yeah,
slowly
you
raise
did,
the
yeah,
you
rate.
did 15%,
Right.
and then you said you would look at it.
Oh, I thought we had voted.
No, we laid out what the overall
okay,
plan
right,
was, but we were gonna revisit it after a year to see if we were gonna continue on the path
Right.
that we had
Alright.
agreed on.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else, Dylan?
Well, we had a snapping turtle stuck in our lagoon line from coming into the facility. So last week, I believe it was Thursday, we had Penta Corporation out of Molten Grove come over and cut that line to pull the turtle out. So we can restore normal flow into the facility. Other than that, I don't have anything else for you, but that was.
All right, while we've got we talked about under old business wastewater treatment plan EPA permit update. Because I have a question with what we read here.
Sure.
First of all, how's that new system working? Are you,
It's still, it's working well. The magnesium hydroxide, I mean, it's doing what we want to do. It's saving us from using another chemical.
Yeah.
That's
and is
working.
that a viable long-term solution to anything?
Mother Nature plays a bigger role in it than,
Okay,
it's more so water temperature that will control things, but it helps drastically.
okay. The question I have is in Mark, when you sent us your item 10A, 8A, it says to start work on the design. Well, what people should know is the permitting process is being put off again because they changed leadership at the EPA. Our rep is not our rep anymore, the person who's been working on it. And this kind of thing happened to us in the dam project as well, where we had, filled in documents, made our presentations, got agreements, and they changed the person on us. So the question I have, Mark, here is that you want to start on a design process where we have even less information on what the permit is going to be.
So we have,
So what are we going to design that's going to be aside from the permit, is my question.
so we received a draft permit in December, right? And last December.
Right.
We have commented on that draft permit, right? We got to review the draft permit and we submitted our comments. And we specified in our response the areas that we contend should be different in some way. The majority of that is timing, not the actual requirements of the permit. Okay, so EPA then goes over our comments and they decide whether or not they accept what we've said or whether they're going to stick by the draft permit that they gave us. Okay, we do not anticipate, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not anticipate that the final permit is going to change the requirements in any meaningful way, right? They're going to.
We're hoping for timing.
Well, we're hoping that they will give us timing, right? But the actual numbers, the requirements to meet for the treatment of the water, the effluent requirements are not going to change appreciably. So we know that we can start designing for those numbers because it's really just a matter of when we have to meet those requirements. Not that they're not gonna eliminate anything that's in that permit.
Well, didn't we ask them to eliminate some things because of
No.
hardship?
We asked them to give us time to
But
build a
also,
new plan.
I could be wrong with this, but I was thinking that we're saying, listen, this is what we've got 2 acres to work with. We're gonna have to try to do it this way. Can you help us work with that?
No, we did not say that.
Well-
We did not tell them, like total suspended solids, right? They gave us a number. It's a very low number. It takes a lot of treatment to get there, right? But we did not go back to them and say, instead of a total suspended solids of 1, we need it to be 10. Okay, we need to treat it less. We didn't say that in our response. Okay, we said, we can't meet total suspended solids of this right now. Same thing with ammonia, right? We didn't argue about the end number. We argued about the timing of when we would need it. Because our old plant cannot meet some of the requirements that they gave us within
Regardless
the
of the time.
timeframes.
Right.
Right,
Regardless of the time, that's the key, I think
That's
that's
right.
maybe the key point, yes.
And so,
Well, I just don't know about this. This is the thing that has irked me about the whole process, and it's the EPA's fault, not ours. Where I can't understand, and I'll go on record to say this, why the EPA couldn't send a representative here to say, come and say, this is Waterville Valley, this is what they have, this is what they're gonna need, and this is the resource they have to get it done. What can we do to make this work? Or can we make it work, or can we not make this work? And that's something I've been asking for, a while, but we're getting no response from the EPA. They want someone out here. Because I just think for us to go on and design something, we might not be able to afford, or we might be able to get this done in a different way if they see what we have. That's the point I'm talking about.
they won't It's
On the
not
record,
they-
it's elected.
They are refusing, they didn't even tell us that they changed the person until Dylan reached out to them.
Oh, no, but
So-
the question I have is, we do this engineering and it might be something, it just, I just, would-
I need it.
yeah, but I want to see us, it's tough to try to exhaust all avenues of having them tell us what we need, as opposed to us spending money on something we think they'll take. And then,
No,
going,
no.
nope, this ain't gonna work either.
No, so EPA has told us what we need.
Right. They gave us our
That
draft
draft
plans.
permit is what we need to do. Okay, they will not tell us you need this type of plant and you can accomplish it using this method. They won't do that.
Yeah, they leave it up to the
They don't,
engineers.
they leave it up to the community. They give us, the EPA's role in this is to tell us what level of treatment we need to meet
To protect them.
and to protect the environment. And so there are many different ways, that's what this whole design process is
No,
about.
I got you.
We're gonna look at all of the options to get to those numbers. So,
But given those numbers,
yeah,
it's certain that the current plant cannot be
Yes.
upgraded
Right.
to reach
So,
numbers that they've given us that we've gone back and commented on,
that's what.
saying essentially, we need more time
exactly.
to do this,
So
to reach this.
in that
And this is
email-
all because the effluent's going into the river. That's
Right.
why the EPA is
That's
involved.
Right, exactly. We have a discharge permit into the Mad River.
Right. If it
And-
wasn't for that, it would just be
Totally
It would
different.
be
DES,
Correct.
Yeah.
state.
And the thing that doesn't help us is that we haven't had a permit in over 20 years of a renewal. So that is why there's literally like, they will not reason for.
But that's on them
Well,
too.
it's not
That
like,
is
it's
on
not
me.
like they sent us the mail and we threw it away.
Right.
This
No,
is
no,
the
right,
first
right.
time they've asked for it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's not our
That's the way
fault.
And unfortunately, we're here now.
Yeah,
and that's
somebody's
because of
dog
us.
ate the old permit.
That's the way they play the
No,
game.
no, I just want to be on the record.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
just
know.
think it's unfortunate, the situation. we're in.
Right. And it doesn't help.
So, but the thing with the design work, what I wrote you in the memo was the engineer has basically been sitting there, not moving on any of the design work because we didn't have the final permit in hand. Now, it doesn't appear we're gonna get that final permit until the end of the year.
I would like-
I mean, we're gonna keep pushing. Right, exactly. If we
But
get it.
can the engineer do design work without the final
Yes,
permit?
because we will tell them,
Yeah.
well, yes, but because what we're gonna tell them is
The work off.
work off the draft permit, because.
Right.
We can revise.
Yeah,
And then
we can
it can
revise.
be revised later, but I don't think,
As
I
long as
don't
we're
think it's gonna need to be revised much,
No.
if any.
No.
The big question in my eyes, and when we talk with the engineers, isn't so much the primary and secondary treatment of the effluent, it's the tertiary, that's the big dollar stuff that we're worried about. It's not so much treating replacing our lagoons, we already have an idea of what that's going to require. It's not that's not the hard part, it's what comes out of the lagoons and what we treat in the actual plant is what's expensive. That's where the tertiary treatment racks a dollar amount up. So replacing our lagoons with SBRs, it's not, that's not the 10 or $15 million on top of replacing for tertiary treatment.
And that's something we probably want to do anyway, given the state of the
Lagoons.
lagoon.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so that it's
They're 50 or whatever.
right,
40
49 years old or whatever they are. So that is I don't see them changing anything in terms of our suspended solids limit. And what we argued in our comments to the EPA after they issued us a draft permit was that the region standard for suspended solids is a 5 milligram per liter, but we have a 1. So they don't, if their region standard's a 5, how can they expect us to meet a 1 for all these years when they don't issue anything lower than that besides us? We have the lowest suspended solids limit in all of New England.
All because we.
Into
And
the Mad River.
we're the first plant into the Mad.
We're the
So
only
we
plant,
set
yeah.
the- We set the standard.
Everyone
For
adds
everyone
on.
else, and everybody adds on to ours, that's why ours is so low.
And the problem with the EPA is that they have an anti-backslide clause where they will never, ever issue anything easier than what they already have implemented under permit. So that is That's the other side of the token that makes it more difficult.
Well, this gets back to the question of having, deciding which way to go, whether we can do the ground option. or
Right.
just deal with DES.
Correct.
So that led to my recommendation in paragraph 10 of the memo, is that we need to get the engineering moving, even if it's on the initial and secondary treatment, at least they can start the design work on that. They are not doing anything right now. And if we continue on this, if we waited until February or March of 22 to start that work, we can't get the numbers for the 23 town meeting.
We'll be behind.
We'll be way behind, and we're gonna lose an entire year in the design process. And so that's why I said, we need to ask them for that contract to review so that we can get that.
And we still have to hope EPA gives us the extra time for that.
That's right.
So in that email, I was gonna mention that they reference how they typically don't go over 5 years for a
Right.
compliance schedule. That is a significant number to remember, because if we wait too long, with town meeting, we might build a plant and have a new permit issued to us right after we build a new facility.
Which would
That's-
cause further changes.
Correct, because they issue a permit every 5 years. We just have been off the radar for so long
Right.
that
Well,
that's,
what if we build a plant and then they decide to change the
well,
plant?
that's part of
So
why.
we're kind of the same,
But-
it's either way.
This is where we're coming from, is that's why we want to
It's
build
like,
a
are we getting
facility.
slapped with the left hand or the right hand?
That's why we want to build a facility that will meet our
Yeah.
future permit limits. That's what we're up
We're gonna
against.
build the best possible plan we can so that we
Don't have to go-
we
that's
don't have to
what I'm saying.
worry about that.
Yeah, even if,
Well, it's a big
Yeah, no,
upfront
that's-
cost, but we can't take the chance that we flip the switch and then the next day get another permit.
Right. With a $5 million
With
upgrade
a
on top
$5
of
million
that.
upgrade. We gotta design way out into the future.
Yeah.
Really in a box, having
It's in.
having to have that effluent discharge into
Mad River.
that really.
Yeah, because if you look at the plants that discharge into the Pemmicoasset River,
Yeah.
their permits are 10 times easier than ours because it's a larger river and there's other facilities that discharge into it.
Right.
So it's just because we're the only source of potential contamination. That's why our permit's so strict for the Mad River.
Does it make sense to tell the EPA that we are moving forward with new plant design, using the draft memo parameters?
We can tell them.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't want them to think that we're sitting here doing nothing, waiting for them to are
This is the
doing
same
nothing.
scenario we had with the dam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
In other words, respond to the email.
I
by saying,
would respond to the email saying, based on your comments,
And
we
delay.
cannot wait any longer, and we are going to begin designing a plant to meet the
Draft
proposed, the
permit, the draft permit.
draft permit that
Keep our
you have
fingers
given
crossed that
us.
you let us,
Yeah.
give us the extra years.
And, we'll stay in touch with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
About our
Basically,
progress.
you told that to DES.
I had a conversation with a representative from New Hampshire DES on Thursday. He gave me a heads up that they were having a meeting in-house today to go over our final permit from the EPA. So he wanted my input on what we wanted out of that meeting. And I told him, I said, we need to get our final permit as soon as possible, so that way we can prepare for what we need to build for a facility, because we're just sitting here wasting time essentially.
So EPA is talking with DES.
Yeah,
Correct.
they go
They-
through DES,
yes.
they give DES a chance to comment on
On
part
ours.
of this.
Yeah, I would just
Yeah, we
want to let the
communicate
parties know we're not sitting on our hands
Right.
here. We're moving forward because we
today
need to move
Yeah.
forward. There's,
Mhm.
an emergency
So, yeah.
aspect to our going forward.
Good discussion.
Yeah.
just as an aside, while I was away, I happened to meet the head engineer for wastewater for the city of Austin. And that's why I asked you what the numbers were for our draft permit. And so Dylan sent back the exact numbers and I read them off to her and she just looked at me and she goes, Good luck with that. That's unheard of.
It's so special.
Yeah.
So many ways, right?
They even got the water on our name.
Just Bill.
Treeville Valley.
Treeville
You have to
Valley.
go with the Forest Service.
All right, I'll send that, I will send that.
Jim, what's going on with you?
I'm getting caught up. I've been away for a little bit, so, one thing I can tell you that, Ellie Johnston has started on Moose Run as
Oh,
we
good.
speak.
Oh, yeah, you got it really,
So,
really going to town there. Sorry, else one up.
the, just so that you know, the excavator operator did not apparently get the memo on saving the trees, so we weren't able to relocate them. So if you get any comments on that, the trees have been relocated, they're just not relocated to where we were supposed to put them, so.
Well, Craig probably has some equipment to do that, right?
Well, yes, we were going to help Craig out with that, and, but they didn't survive the
They cut the root
uprooting.
system.
So the trees are gone. But at any rate, it started and I'm just in the middle of getting caught up here, so.
Alrighty. Anything for Jim?
I noticed, this is your favorite selectman talking about whiskey barrel trash on Cochrane Pond. A couple of them are being used for trash. They were empty. Couple of whiskey barrels.
Okay.
Okay,
I saw it about a week ago. I don't know if you guys have cleaned it out. I see we now have a trash can out there. It's been there.
Yeah.
That, yeah, the
Yeah,
rec
the rec
department
department put one out.
usually does that, yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple empty whiskey barrels that people were using.
Well, then I guess we should remove those whiskey barrels. then.
It's a thought.
Yeah.
Or we continue to, I think it looks unsightly, the whiskey barrel.
Give them
trash
back to
can.
Sean, who I think owns all the whiskey barrels.
Is that where they came from? I don't.
No, these aren't the half.
Yeah, no, they're the half. We still have a couple one filled with flowers and one under the sign, a pot filled with, or whiskey, but there were two others that were empty and I don't know where they came from.
Well, I will check with Park and Rec and see if they'd like those removed so that they won't be used.
How about our lights?
Before I left, I emailed the electrician and I have not heard back from him, so that's on my list today. And I did check this morning before I came here to see if they in fact were installed, but they weren't.
Right. And I also saw the lights on the bridge on Saturday night, and I did not find them particularly expensive. I thought they lighted the bridge very well. They're all facing down, not up.
And remember, we did call the electrician back in to look, yeah, to lower that was $2,800 that we spent,
Right.
if I remember correctly.
Have you gotten any recent complaints?
All righty.
Have you guys got?
Don't go to college. Electricians.
Lights.
Okay.
All right, how about public safety?
Just maintaining, been pretty busy for us, just going no particular order. Started hose testing last week. We had our annual truck maintenance come in, finding the age on a few things on the trucks towards the hose goes. Want to congratulate Pat. I didn't have the opportunity at the last meeting, but graduated from firefighter 1. So to bring that to your attention. Be glad to have it back here on a regular basis. We have our monthly department training scheduled for Wednesday evening. We'll be doing some pump training. We did participate in the Get to Know the Valley and have stickers and just talking to everybody over there. Pretty busy. It's nice, very well attended. weekends still busy, a lot of people around, weddings and, another small group that was over at the ice arena, but, really no major issues. Speed trailer's up. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to see it. We've had a lot of positive feedback on it, and we've been kind of switching it around on Fridays for the weekend traffic, and then moving it during the week, so it kind of caters to the elementary school traffic. And we'll continue to do that. I think we'll recommend some of the feedback that I get. Some people are like, "Well, we'd like it in front of you put it on our road or a way that people can email in, and would encourage them that if they would like to request it on their road, we can certainly accommodate that, those requests. So just let us know, when and where, and we'll put that out to everyone too, that if there's a particular time or on the weekends or whatever, we can begin to move that around. School open, we've been working with the school, with their fire drills and just trying to maintain the traffic. It does get busy there for about 15 minutes each morning and every afternoon. And we're firing up all the inspections and occupancy permits. Because of COVID, a lot of these didn't get done last year, so they're quite good. So we're working with between the schools and the academy and knocking down on all the resort properties and the hotels. This is the season for that, to get that stuff done. Other than that, that's all I have. We have
2:00, 11:00. Define where they're coming from and what they are. Everywhere, hotels, Windsor Hill. That's where most of them were, the hotels. But I have to have a conversation today again, I think, with our hotels of, they have to try to remedy the situation first, because I think we're resorting back to just calling us immediately for everything, so. And is this groups congregating or just individual? It's weddings. What? It's wedding parties. It's most of it. The Windsor Hill ones are wedding parties. I guess they were complaining, I spoke to one of the guys this morning, and they were complaining that they're coming up here and there's nothing to do after 9 o'clock. And so
This isn't part of the actual wedding.
At the conference.
Nothing to do with the
center.
conference center,
This
no.
is people then
This is
desiring to.
We used to have Legends, and Legends was the
Right, the
destination
bar,
for,
right.
Where they kind of congregated till
Yeah.
about midnight, 1 o'clock, they
Yeah.
kept them contained. Now there is that, they don't have that, so.
and they don't want to go to the arcade.
No. But that was, I guess, one complaint this weekend from one of the noise complaints.
Yeah.
11:30 at night was, we got up here, I think it was Friday night, and they said, we just drove 3 hours here for my daughter's wedding, and there's nothing for us to do. We can't congregate anywhere, we can't do anything.
Go to your daughter's wedding and have a good time. You don't
Yeah,
have
it
to
was-
get drunk at 11:30 at night, parking.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. As a resort and as a community, resort needs to probably deal with this in a way. We had that same situation many years ago.
Yeah.
With teenagers. There's nothing for teenagers to do when the resort came up with sliders. I don't know if you might remember.
I remember sliders, yeah.
Or was it teen club? But yeah, that's really valid. And maybe we should talk to the wedding people about that too. Maybe they could keep their again, they could make money doing it. Maybe operate the bistro as a thing.
Provide an inside space in the conference center as opposed to an outside space.
Yes, because I understand these people's points. It's not this getting drunk together. It's the fact that people want to get together and celebrate. They come here, they haven't seen anybody. They want to get together. I don't know if they're all of them, just in drunk, but they're having a social.
Well, what it is it's the residents
Oh, no, I.
that are in the hotels, and that's where the issue is that you're gonna have, and I don't think they're out of control by any means, but they are being loud, and
No, I
you're
get it.
sticking them in situations where they're other guests.
We're not a full-time resident.
Yeah, full-time residents, other guests, black
Oh,
bear.
no, I get it. It's the Airbnb thing, but there is no place for these people to get, it's.
How late are the restaurants, bars allowed to stay open?
If they're a bar, they can stay open until 12, 1 o'clock, but they're not, they're closing at around 10 roughly. We did have some,
Yeah.
La Hacienda was doing some after parties like Legends. I know at the beginning of this year, but they were the only ones doing it.
So it's tough, yeah, with the staffing issue, everyone's got, you
I
know.
think that's the issue.
Yeah, interesting.
There's nothing outside of the valley either.
You can have a couple of drinks. and drive
No,
down.
that's what I mean. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
But even if they have somebody driving for them, there's still no place to go around here because every place.
Really, because they don't have the staffing to keep open later.
Ready, you said you came here for.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about this.
Very interesting. No, it's interesting what they're saying. I guess you bring up some good points. There's no place for them to go, but still, they're being too loud. I mean, it's not fair to the residents putting up with their noise.
It's a tough thing, and that's part of the issue of the Airbnb and the rentals and.
And the person who is on the agenda for the
Right.
noise ordinance. It's
Right.
Well, I have a different take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a completely different take on that. No, Ray, I understand your point, and I think it's up to the condominiums to create their own bylaws and guidelines. And that means it's up,
I mean, they have that. What happens when the people get noisy?
Call.
After 10 o'clock at night. Yeah.
10 o'clock's the noise ordinance in the town,
Yeah.
so don't hesitate to call. We're here 24/7.
but also I've seen people in specifically your complex that have got fined for dog food and dog, other stuff. You know, you might want to find the owners for parties going on after these hours, and you know, that's the only way I see of dealing with it, is I don't see it being a policing matter because of a rule in your condo association, not specifically yours, but in any kind of association.
We don't have an enforcement agency.
Well, no, it's the same thing, like, the hotels used to have enforcement because of hockey, we have a situation with hockey, and they get security for that. But I just don't know the answer for that right now, it's a tough one.
These really aren't parties as much as just
It's just the
a
fact
few
that
guys
people-
sitting out in the balcony, right? Are we talking about that kind of thing?
Finding people isn't after the fact.
Right, but here's the problem we have,
You gotta
right?
knock the noise off.
We're a town where, I know from my own experience, where a visit to anybody's house ends at 9 o'clock, no matter what you're doing, and then it's 9 o'clock, and you pick up and you go home, because that's the community we are. These people aren't part of that community, so I don't know this to be true, but I don't think there's any maliciousness in this or anything else. But it's just that fact that there's no place for these people to go. And see the people.
Well, I know I spoke to a resident right before I went on vacation, so 2 weeks ago. And that was his message too, was how do we bridge the gap between, he goes, exactly what you just said, and that's what made me think of it, is he's like, I don't think they're being malicious by any means.
Yeah.
They're just here to have a good time, and we're not going to a ton of fights with these people. I mean, we are sometimes, but he's like, how do we get them to understand that people also live here? And it's not just a weekend destination where we party all weekend long. He goes, how do we bridge that gap? I know this weekend up near his residence, it was 1:40 in the morning.
Well, that's,
And it was, as soon as we showed up, they all ran inside. They were just outside hanging out, congregating when we arrived. But our not our policy, but kind of what we do is when we go there, your first one is a warning. Hey, quiet hours are 10 o'clock. You got till midnight. We got a call, quiet down. We come back and here's going to be your noise ordinance ticket for $150. And very rarely do we ever have to go back. It's usually nipped in the butt the first time we go.
I think Mike, I think you make a valid point that while we have a town enforcement mechanism to shut down the noise as quickly as possible, there is some responsibility for the associations. And you can do it not through enforcement, but through fining. That you have in your own bylaws, condo docs, basically, right? Where if you violate the rights of the other owners, you pay a fine. That doesn't solve the noise problem right away, but it may.
but it could cause someone to put a big sign
Something
on the
exactly.
door in big letters, quiet hours here are from. And you put it there, you put it 3 places in the condo where people are really.
We have rules
Yeah, but I'm talking about rules, you have to go find the rule book and do that. You know, I mean, I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but a big, you know how like when you get inside a place, it gives you the map to the exits. And back on the door, it says, please be observed, quiet hours, tenants will be fine. You know, just something to let people know. So maybe that out of 7 people in a room, 1 people read it and said, hey, we're being a little bit loud, we have to pay attention to this.
Well,
I
I
just
think
don't want to
also-
get into finding.
We have the rules, we have the rules, and I think I am blaming the victim.
A big one?
We have the rules.
I'm talking about how our society works now. We have rules, but no one reads them. You know, that's the problem. It's, we have to take that extra step to ensure what we want.
I think what we're talking about is more deterrence here.
Yeah.
Trying to
Yeah.
deter the activity.
The more times that if you write an owner of a unit
Right,
for their guests' noise violation, then you're gonna get more compliance from those
Exactly.
owners.
And then they're gonna put the big sign on this, so they don't have to be hassle.
And they're gonna tell them before they come.
Yeah.
Hey, quiet hours, 10
Yeah.
o'clock, before
Well,
we rent it to
I-
you, it's.
I
we're done
think
at
this is
10.
also responsibility of the wedding organizers and the wedding people. We did that with hockey. We made the teams responsible for, you know, the conduct of the athletes.
Well, the only difference to that, Mike, was that the hockey tournaments were happening in the town.
Oh, no.
And we could say, you're not gonna be able to have tournaments.
Right, but I think if you don't, I think if the rules are hammered in by the wedding coordinator and the wedding staff, and they organize this, and when people get a welcome to Waterville wedding thing from the wedding, you know, we're having breakfast here at this time, we're playing golf at this time, and by the way, quiet hours are observed. Please observe these. This is a residential community. You know, the more we make people aware of what we are and what we're asking for, the better shot we have. I don't know if this is an answer at all, but I think it's a step.
yeah, well, I mean, it's multi-layered, right? I mean, deterrence depends on information.
Right.
So people know, and then if necessary, the stick, which is, I think, at the local association, you're violating the rights of your own, your fellow owners. And at the same time that DPS quiets things down. That seems the only logical approach at this point until, and if ever, there's a place where people can congregate later, like after the dinner and all that stuff, and go someplace in town square and.
Maybe someone should talk to someone working about letting the bar be known, it can be open to be open. Fill a void.
I think it's just a staffing issue, maybe.
Yeah.
Or,
It's
I don't
nothing,
know.
but it's, you know, the risk and reward. I think if you, from owning bars and restaurants in the past, if you create a bar where people want to be and want to have drinks, your staff is going to be very well compensated for being open.
Well, the problem is he doesn't own that stuff.
What?
It's owned by La Hacienda, they own both, the Valley Club and.
No, I'm talking about the Snowy Owl restaurant.
Oh, Sean Warren.
Sean,
Well, you said Sean Hurd, so I was like.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Does the condo association get notified when you get a noise complaint?
I mean, they can ask for the reports. I know, I think it's Linda over there. She's, I think when I've seen her prior, she's asked me, hey, were you guys here this weekend? Yeah, we were. But nobody's ever really requested any information, which you can get, so don't hesitate to reach out to her.
I'm sure she does. She's really good. She's very on top of it.
But if you have specific units that are every weekend, let us know. You can always come and chat with me. We'll try to do some.
We had a
work.
situation a few years ago where you had a time to love you. That we're not the best we could.
I'm sure Linda will find somebody. if she-
Yeah,
if they're doing it. Is it mostly guests or owners?
I think it's a mix. If it's at residential, it's, well,
No,
owners
I
are
mean-
owners, families, and,
Right.
yeah, so it's a mix of that. Hotels, it's obviously 90% is guests, but residential, it's, I think once weekends ago, it was their unit, and it was their kids that were in it, so.
The problem is, we don't have any white noise. I mean, we're so silent that any noise.
Absolutely.
that comes out, yeah.
The other thing about when you drive around town, it feels like everybody's partying because you can see everything. So you're like, everybody's up there. You know what I'm saying? So
We
it's
live in a bottom of a bowl.
yeah, we got that too.
the noise in this town carries funny.
Yeah.
You know, when they're playing the music over for the weddings, I mean, it sounds like they're right next door.
See, it's funny, and I don't get that at my house, but I will get stuff from the golf course every once in a while.
Yeah,
And it's another
because
couple
the
weeks.
sound carries around the mountain,
It
so.
does. It does. And the people that live up on Snows Mountain, they hear it from the ski area
Sure.
in the winter, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so
So,
the noise carries, that,
Yeah.
you know, that was gonna be one of my comments, that when they're playing music for the weddings, you know, we can hear it, it's
right,
pretty loud,
right.
you know, at the 10 o'clock,
And it's probably gotten louder over the years.
it
It didn't
it
used
does.
to be as
I
loud
don't
as it is,
understand why
plus
these
a lot of
things-
the weddings used to
The
be
equipment
indoors.
version is good.
Right,
And the
and a lot
equipment-
of the weddings used to be indoors, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why these musicians play it, you know, the highest volume they can, because that's what people want, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
they wanna go deaf.
I think we discussed that, we kind of discussed this issue when we were looking at the noise ordinance last year, is how we could, or if we could, or if we wanted to measure noise level decibel,
Yeah.
which some towns do,
Mhm.
but we decided not to go that route. So we don't really regulate the decibel level, we regulate the hours where we consider noise to be unreasonable, I believe is the word we use. So we don't have specific, noise levels for lengths of time, which is the usual, way you look at damaging noise. And we have no way to measure it. We have to that's more specific, as other towns do.
Also, we very seldom get a request to extend the noise ordinance. Usually the only
Right.
time it happens, like this past weekend, for instance, we had apparently they had 3 weddings going on. And if they have a couple of weddings at the conference center, they need cleanup time in between the 2 weddings to get things set up for the next one. That cuts into party time for the second wedding. And so that was the reason that we allowed
Right.
for that extra hour.
In
But
my
it
3
sounds
years
to
on the
me
board-
like, it sounds to me like some of the noise is not necessarily associated with the tent and the conference center. I'm sure it's noisy. I have no doubt in my mind that it's noisy if you live in Snowsbrook condominium, if you're at the Snowy Owl, any place around Town Square. There's gonna be noise on Friday and Saturday night, when you can be outside. And then it gets real quiet for about 7 months. So,
It's my recollection in the 3 or so years I've been on the board, we've only approved 2 or 3.
yeah, it's not a
From 10 to
frequent
11,
thing.
it's-
Yeah,
it's like,
it's not
say,
a
we're at
frequent
1 a
thing,
year,
and
maybe.
again, it's
Have we moved on
because,
to that?
Well, we
Yeah.
kind of slid into it.
yeah, we kind of slid
All right.
into it, that we've only done that
All
occasionally.
right, and the suggestion I would make regarding this
Mhm.
is that this should be a conversation between the Snowsbrook owners and the conference center.
Mhm.
You know, this is a neighbor.
I mean, maybe the conference center can agree to put up some, I don't know,
Yeah.
soundboards or something on the back side so that it doesn't travel as much, although I don't know that will help.
No, but I think they should see about working out something where maybe the conference center doesn't know how much this is affecting Snowsbrook with the new technology.
Right. And, again, for our part, we're trying to make sure that things shut down at 10 o'clock.
Right.
It's very rare that we will approve something beyond that 10 o'clock, but we're very open about when we do it and why we do it. But it is rare. I think this is the only one we've had this year. We had
We've
2
only
this year.
had- No, not this year. We've only had 2 in
In
the
about-
last 5 years.
Yeah.
What are the occasions that you allowed it to go to 11? I'm just curious.
Again, it was a situation where the wedding was taking place like in the evening. And by the time they got over to the conference center and had dinner, and now it was party time, it would be like 9 o'clock. And they asked to have more than just an hour of party time. nice
And
thing.
you've only done that twice in 5 years. you said?
Twice, I think
Right.
twice.
And-
in
and
5
this
years
is-
extended.
It's normally somebody from the mountain will come and ask us if they can have an extension under that situation.
All right, but let's
Get married early.
Let's take a
Sorry?
look.
Well, but they
Very
had,
early.
but like she said though, Ray, there were multiple weddings.
If there are multiple
Oh,
weddings,
So
okay,
okay.
so they
Okay.
start in the
Good.
afternoon at
Yeah,
4.
I'm glad to hear that you're reluctant to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
we haven't been asked.
We haven't
We've
been
only
asked.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but when you get asked, I'm glad that you're reluctant to.
All right,
do
so
that.
we are elected.
Right, there
But
there
let-
has to be a very good reason
But
before we
let's,
say yes.
let's actually take this and project it from the initial conversation with where we started. That there's a chance we're probably gonna get more of these when people get circulated around, that after the wedding is over, there's no place to go and nothing to do.
Right.
So once that gets out in feedback through the weddings and stuff, people are gonna wanna be able to party at the conference center later.
Right.
So,
They're gonna wanna do something.
That would be the logical place.
And they can move inside.
I understand, but is that going to affect our friends at Snowsburg? You know, because if they're out inside, they're gonna be outside, you can't smoke inside a building in New Hampshire. So I don't know the answer to this, but it's something we need to look at, but I really think the next step is to, see if they can work out something between themselves.
And again, when the noise ordinance is in effect, I don't care whether it's at the conference center or whether it's out in somebody's condominium complex or somebody's house. If you as a neighbor are bothered by it, please do call the police and bring them in.
Absolutely.
And, and as Pat has said this morning, it usually only takes one show of a badge for people to calm down and go inside or get quieter. So, please do that. That's why we have a noise ordinance and that's how we enforce it.
Hopefully, though, as you also mentioned, you don't get there because of the deterrent thing set up ahead of time through flyers or what have you, and some sort of penalty for owners who are not abiding by their own bylaws.
Yeah, and this could be if your kids.
If you want to go that route.
If your kids are doing it too, if your kids are coming up every weekend and making a lot of noise, it's not just for the people that are renting.
Okay, anything else on that? We don't have Brooke here today.
No. I'm not sure. There is an after-school issue that we'll need to go over. I was hoping that she would be here.
Okay.
We can go on to another item. I'm gonna text her and
Okay.
see if she
So,
can join us.
We can probably do our calendar review. So the next regular meeting is September 22nd. It's only about 10 days away at 3:00. We have a planning board meeting on September 23rd at 8:00 the next day. And also, coming up this weekend, the New Hampshire Run for the Fallen.
Yes, I wanted to give you a couple of updates.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything, volunteer.
To let
We're-
people use
all
our
right, just
restrooms.
wanted to-
We'll be getting out to the volunteers. That was the first thing. We'll be getting out to the volunteers in the next couple of days. They just finalized where everybody's going to be, as far as the families around. So we'll be contacting volunteers for that. A really, great source of volunteers has come forward with the academy. Kids are all gonna be volunteering, which is awesome. Everything is set up. We have the directional signs upstairs, and we've confirmed all the other support stuff, the drinks, the conference center, the porta potties. It looks like about $2,000 to $2,500 is the total cost of everything that they will need as far as the town's concerned.
And the signs that people are paying for, where's the revenue from that, like, what's the cost of this?
No, it's being donated to the organization.
Okay, just start.
So, that will be the $50 donation minus the cost of the sign, and I think it'll be, I think it's about 50-50 split.
Has it started selling signs?
They have
At the
started
Welcome
to sell
Center?
at the Welcome Center. Yeah, so you can go there. But I just needed to know if it would be all right for the town to donate that, or if you want me to go back to the organization to pay some of that 25.
Yeah. I agree.
We've got room in the budget, yes, okay.
No going away parties.
No, go.
And no one's leaving.
No.
Nobody's allowed to leave.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, and, yeah, this is-
Okay. So if you volunteered, you can expect to hear within the next couple of days whether there's going to be a family at your property, or please go to the Welcome Center and buy a sign, whatever. Okay. We have a volunteer for the Conservation Commission, Kristen Taylor. I have a motion to approve.
I will make that motion, Margaret.
You have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Rich, the parking ordinance.
Yes, thank you. So, I met with DPS and Mark had previously, I think, talked to the folks in DPW about where we could possibly have on-street parking, were we to want to have on-street parking. And a couple of things that went into this, and all the work was done by the guys I just mentioned. It seemed pretty apparent at the beginning that where we really needed on-street parking, if we were to go that route, the fun would be the north end of the town. Since there's plenty of parking from basically Valley Road down through Town Square, through the conference center parking. It doesn't seem to be an issue with on-street parking in that area, nor is it well suited for on-street parking, as I understand from Department of Public Works. So I believe you should have a map.
Yeah, but I think it's black and white.
Okay, so basically, with that introduction, what DPS and DPW looked at was the north end of the town, say, going from Boulder Path forward. And there are 7 areas that were identified as potential on-street parking areas. Again, if you wanted to go that route. Now, 2 of them are already being used for on-street parking. Those are the ones in green. I didn't know it's Margaret. The one along Valley, of course, is what we had temporarily approved for the end of March this year. And then the other one is basically the unofficial, for I don't know how many decades on-street parking that goes on the lower reach of
Is that
Snows
on,
Mountain
but
Road.
is that on town line?
Both,
Absolutely.
After the-
yeah. If they park parallel, it would be all completely on the town right away, but parking nose in, it intrudes into.
So it is town line.
The ball
That's
course.
fine, but because it stretches onto the town line, so it is.
That's good.
Yes. So the other 5 areas you see in red are areas that currently there is no on-street parking allowed, but where one could consider on-street parking. Now, very briefly, I discussed this with the planning board as well. And just to go back to the 2 green areas, there was general agreement that parallel in that regard. And it was also understood that the temporary parking allowed now on Valley Road will be going away, because that will be in the bike lane, pedestrian path, once we rebuild, reimagine, is that the word?
Yeah.
These roads, depending on the start, so that will go away, but everyone was in favor of across from the tennis courts. Now, one other path, actually, from a DPW standpoint, DPS standpoint, is an excellent place where we want to have on-street parking. That will be along Boulder Path Road between Snows Mountain and Valley, but there was no sentiment on the planning board to allow any on-street parking there.
I will say that's.
Yes,
And
everyone,
you're gonna just have cars down with golf balls.
and I was thinking it's the prettiest view in the valley, and you're looking down towards, Osceola.
Many golf balls.
It's just, if you want people really upset when they come back and notice how their cars are.
I think the focus was more on the winter traffic.
Yeah.
For,
But also, don't we have a problem there with people walking on the street because of plowing over there? You know, it's just one of those things, the only time it really gets plowed really well down is when it's special Olympics.
You're talking about like north of
Well,
Snows Mountain Road?
that's just it, Mike. That is the area where we have enough room off of the road that we could plow
You're talking
If
south of
you're-
Snows Mountain,
south
Right,
of
but-
Snows Mountain to the intersection with Valley.
the
Road.
valley.
But my thought would be is if we plowed it, it would be better for pedestrians to use it for walking and people with their dogs and families walking into the park. Because we have people, I live on that road, I drive it every day, when, that's not
Mhm.
plowed to the full extent, you have people walking four abreast on that road because there's no place to go.
Right.
So I would think it would be really not the idea to plow it just for parking, the idea would be to plow it for people to walk.
Oh, I think that
And
would
the
be
other-
another consequence of plowing it, but we don't want to plow it unless we're going to allow parking. And we need to cover up the strip between the sidewalk and the road.
We do plow the sidewalk, right?
Yes.
With the
Yes.
little,
Mhm.
Yes,
when it's working.
Usually the sidewalk is so treacherous.
Yeah.
If people are out on the street.
Right, which is why we're going
Yes, I
to
see.
what we're going.
That parking, what purpose does that parking serve?
Yeah.
What
The one
In the
on
access?
Lower
winter,
Back.
in the
Yeah.
winter, it would be for tubing. That
Yes.
would be,
and I don't want to talk out of school, but just in discussions with Craig, he was very much for it, only because if that was the case, that became parking, he would be encouraged to actually change his operations where more people, they're not parking at the clubhouse, but they would check in over where his maintenance, he would do something either where his maintenance building would be, and people could check in for tubing, and then they could just go across the street. And that would eliminate any of the issues for parking.
But I'd like to see a plan.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an
Yeah.
initial,
Yeah.
sort of just initial, I'm getting thoughts out, and all of these things will have to be discussed. the
I don't
pros.
think it'd be heavily used in the summertime.
Yeah.
I don't think we should.
Now,
No.
the parking to the north of the, Waterville Academy gym building, if you will.
Yes, Cascade, Ridge intersection of Cascade.
Isn't that, not the new parking, but isn't that big lot there, that's used by the public?
It is, but it's owned by BBTS, and they at any time could.
Yeah, but you can only get a couple of spaces and this would be right in someone's yard.
No, actually, if you look at it, well, I'll let, we can
It's
actually
the
get,
bottom of the Cascade Ridge.
right, you can actually get about 10 cars in there.
But
That
the
whole
reason I'm
area
bringing it up is I never see that lot for the
Full, yeah.
BBTS full. There's plenty of
Concur,
space.
but however, I'll let DPS speak to the issues they have up there.
We still get a lot of parking.
Yeah, we get a lot of on-street parking because it's not very well defined. Not a lot of people know that end of the lot is for the trailhead. So this would be more a trailhead parking spot, a designated spot for that trailhead.
Cascade Trail, you
Yeah.
see the sign right there.
What happens is people go up Cascade Ridge and they park it at Bean Bender,
Yeah.
at the intersection of Bean Bender, and then go up the trail.
Mhm.
So what we would do is, there's a catch basin in there, a very big area. That can be, the drainage can be, it doesn't go on that side of the road anyway. That thing has been dry since it was built. Even during the tropical storm Irene, it didn't fill in. And we could make that a parking, a trailhead parking area and sign it that way.
Yeah, but I still think people are gonna drive up to the top there to get closer to
Well,
the
then they
trailhead.
get a.
Yeah, they get tickets.
But
Because
we
we do
do
get
have
calls
an
from
identifiable
residents.
trail.
Are there a lot of cars parked up there?
That's what they actually do is so you have the Sununu house at the end, the two houses where the trail starts.
Yeah.
They just park right in the road.
Right.
So we do have residents that call.
And
in
how
the
many
morning.
cars would you say would be up there?
On a busy weekend, you can have 2 or 3. Some will park down at the cul-de-sac and the others just, once one does it though, they just
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
stacking up.
So up where the bank cross.
Yeah, no, I get all this, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking,
Yeah.
I'm just. it's not
It's
gonna-
just after being vendor, right where the trail starts, right in the road.
It's
They may
surprising me-
anyway.
It's surprising me that people want to hike and try to get as close to the trail.
Exactly.
I'm not walking, I'm not walking.
That- that's
200
what-
yards.
That first Cascade Bridge thing,
Yeah.
going from down
Yeah, oh,
to
no.
up is steep,
Right,
yeah.
but that's the beauty of hiking, right? And of course, we'd be hostage to BBTS wherever to expand.
No, I get
All
what
of
you're
that.
saying, but here's another thing from the DPW point. How much time is it gonna take you to plow all this stuff and keep it clear while you're turning all the roads and everything else?
Let's just put it this way, without the, if we could eliminate, if we had a little parking area there, it's not gonna take, it's an extra pass.
But I'm talking about all of it, I'm not talking about.
All of it,
all of it.
it's actually a little bit easier for us. And if we redo the roads in town with, the combined pedestrian and bike path, it's gonna be very easy for us. It's just an extra
Wing,
wing,
rather than getting the
sidewalk tractor.
out, and
Yeah.
It's actually take us.
And I think in that particular area there, I mean, we're not talking about a concrete slab of a parking lot. We're talking about the permeable.
Yeah,
uh,
something.
Yeah, no, I get all this, I'm just figuring out.
Again, just
And
initial
some
discussion.
of the other concerns I have with these spaces here is, how much they're gonna take a foot. If we make parking between here and there, and then people come in and say, oh, we can park there, and.
And it'll
you see the
extend,
sign.
yeah. That already happens on Snows Mountain Road.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that just gets down to enforcement with the sign. That was the other thing. So I should have said at the very beginning. One of the points brought out by the planning board is that there's a lack of signage, which contributes to people not remembering or perhaps conveniently forgetting that they ought not to park.
No, that's
On
the
the
whole
street.
point I'm making with this.
Right, so
It's like-
we have to put signage, I think, like that. Definitely, but we do have signage, with a temporary parking, we allow on Valley Road. And I think it was Labor Day weekend, they were well beyond,
That's the point. I'm
even though
trying
the
to
sign
make.
says from here to here.
Right.
But that becomes
But then we get some
Enforcement.
issues on this, especially this Boulder Catwalk. If we get this, we park all the way to the end of the road.
Yeah.
Same thing with down here, Mad River, coming over West Branch down in the corner there.
Yeah.
We could be parked all the way.
it'll be one of the potential, that once you start, right, I mean, once you allow it, you're gonna have that problem.
And I think it's a great start for an idea, but I think that needs a lot.
Yeah, no, this is what it is. to
You
start.
also have some parking right now in front of the library, which isn't marked.
That's correct.
It's like 4
Yes.
spaces.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of tennis people tend to slide in there.
Well, the tennis people are sliding in the academy lot behind the academy building.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh, no, I see it.
Weird, that's what it should be. That's one of the main.
They'll park up
No,
Snows
it's not
Mountain
like
Road
the
before they.
dormitory, but the small building. right
Oh,
next to me.
Oh,
There
right.
is dormitory parking
Right.
lot.
Yeah, No,
And,
they-
and this
yeah.
area down where you have near the river, that's the area where actually things are gonna change in terms
Correct.
of
Well,
which
and
way the
this-
path goes,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yes.
this is one area where we're gonna be in that area doing work anyway. It would be a good time to clear back some of the trees and create this space.
again,
Because
small.
again,
Yeah.
we're getting a lot of parking out of Depot Camp on Forest Service land, and if we can give them some alternatives.
But how many spaces are you talking? That's the concern I have. You put in 6 spaces and 16 people parking.
Well, that's gonna happen whatever we do.
Right, and our issue with enforcement is you guys don't have time to enforce parking all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The more parking lots you got, the more.
Well, that's what, I mean, that will be the big question at the top of the discussion. Do we want to go down this path at all? For that very reason.
I'd rather give them some alternatives parking than have them just park wherever. that you think is.
I
that
mean,
can
I
fit
think
their
we
car.
should sign it properly,
Yeah,
and I
more
think if
signs.
you make it
Well, we have
identifiable.
no parking signs all over the place that people park.
Well, that's where I struggle with too, is if you can't see the no parking on streets in Waterville, then that is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And it means nowhere. It's not, doesn't say here or there.
Yeah, and
it
that's
says nowhere.
that's a real drawback. That I see with this is if we pick 6 spaces, 6 spots in town, and we allow on-street parking,
No parking.
people could be parking anywhere because they think you can park on the street now in Waterville. And so that's the other part of this is how do you differentiate?
Well, the sign changes.
That's fine.
Well,
It'll
the
be
sign-
designated areas only.
Right, but again, it's gonna be who's reading the signs, who's paying attention to them, who's following them. That becomes, that puts even more pressure on you, I think, from the enforcement.
Well, that, I mean, that's the underlying philosophical question. Remember, we began this, but were we to go down this
Right,
route, these are the
yeah.
areas.
Exactly.
We may not want to go down this particular.
We may wanna keep it just no on-street parking, because
Yeah.
that's the easiest thing to
But-
enforce.
The idea for the lower end of West Branch Road was simply there's nice, also, you know, you get some nice trails there that'll take you to other
It'll take you
places,
to other
take you up the
places.
connector,
Yeah,
it'll take you up. The one north of River Road to the Forest Service, National Forest Land, again, is idea to get people to be able to get closer to depot camp.
Yeah, there's the connector or something that leads to the connector
It's
comes
the
out
connector that comes
just
away.
beyond,
Yes, that's
just
the connector.
beyond
There's a little
The
trail
tran-
that goes
the,
out of the connector.
correct.
Substation.
So just
Yeah.
beyond the substation, but you've got this identified before the substation, is that correct?
Yes,
It's
it
right
goes up.
beside the, almost up to the substation.
I have another.
But that's the
fundamental problem.
town line.
Yeah. Yes,
The character of the town is gonna change. We have parking lots on our scenic roads every
That's
20 yards.
That's,
You know, that's something that I enjoy about being out and driving from here to there. But I'm driving down a country road and I'm doing that where if I have a park.
I do not disagree.
You know, the character will change if we come down and have these big spaces,
Yeah.
parked cars, where you lose the natural beauty we have, you know, in my mind. And I wouldn't judge anything by my mind, but
Well,
Again,
Mike, that's one of the big things
Yeah.
about that spot that
Right.
we've temporarily allowed
Yeah,
from across
Oh,
from
no,
about Clubhouse.
I
is
get it.
That's gonna be right in front of condos now that have views out to Osceola.
I get it, I
And
get it,
so-
but that, once again, is an issue between the people buying the condos and.
Right.
No,
the-
but
Well, it's
if
on
we
our side,
allow,
we on
but if
town,
we
right?
allow.
Oh, no,
on-street
I get that, but it should probably be defined before the condos are built, so people know what they're getting.
Exactly.
I don't know. That's it.
and the other area, were we to consider this path, is up by the cemetery.
Yeah.
But that would require, I think, some work, maybe some purchase of land to open it up a little bit.
The cul-de-sac.
The
Oh, no, I know
cul-de-sac.
exactly where it is, and I think that
and there
anytime
used
you
to be
really
a
public
trail that
parking
went
is
right
also
off
happening.
there, that's all.
Wonderful.
And for the most part, people
Yeah.
park down
Right.
below and either
Yeah.
we were asked always to get golf cart to help people get up there.
Right.
I don't see that one as a big one.
Well, that one is an issue for the homeowners up
Yeah.
there because people turn around in their driveways or park in their driveways if there's a service up there.
I get people turning on my driveway all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but they're on a cul-de-sac that's used a lot
Yeah.
for service, specific services.
Funeral service.
Oh, no, I-
Last
I-
about a
I-
half hour and
Saturday.
then they're gone.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should build a parking lot, you know, it's like building the church building a parking lot. for Easter.
Right. It'll sit there, nothing the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But this is just a start.
No, I think
Yeah.
These are some areas.
It's a great start.
And, we have committed as a board to move forward with on-street parking, at least reviewing the current ordinance, which allows for no exceptions. One thing we will have to do will be to add a paragraph that gives the board the ability to grant exceptions
Yeah.
if it so chooses. But beyond that, I don't know if you folks want to discuss this again, or whether we want to just open it up to a public hearing sometime this fall.
I think we discussed it again.
Yeah.
This is a lot to process.
Yes.
Of course.
Because, you know, as you notice, things keep coming to my head as I think. of this more. same as happening with both. Well, you've been.
Yeah, no, but again, this was just to throw it out there as a start to discuss. Based on what public safety and public works thinks are workable areas from their perspective.
Yeah, workable enforcement, I think enforcement is going to be the real key to it. Especially in the winter, you guys.
Yeah, I think if we have some spots that's defined versus like not having any, it might actually be a little bit better for us, I think.
But then you have a person who you guys can't enforce it for 3 weeks. I parked here in this illegal space for 3 weeks, then they come in the 4th week, they get a ticket, they're serious.
Well, that's what the sign's gotta be.
And we can.
But I'm talking the sign is gonna be there.
Yeah, I hear
The
you.
guy who parks beyond the sign gets away with it for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, he got away with it for
He
3
got
weeks.
away
Yeah,
with
but
it.
he pissed off on the 4th week. Who knows?
Congratulations, you got away with it.
Exactly. Now you're
That's like,
paying the fine.
that's like speeding on 49.
I think his homework is a show on A&E called Parking Wars. I think you should watch, but it's hysterical, it's just.
My favorite parking thing was the person I saw parking in where the water treatment center is. They had to go by at least 3 signs
parking.
that said no parking anywhere.
Yeah, it's called
In
sign.
order
That's exactly the point I'm making.
Yeah.
It's like stopping the car right in front of the school when they come to a flashing one and two
Yeah.
other speed limit.
All righty. We'll bring that up again,
Yeah.
talk about it again. We got the update on the road repair project of the golf clubhouse. I think Jim already
Yeah.
gave us that. Coalition community update, Mark.
Do you want to talk about ordinance 20 and 21 and add it up to?
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's right, we have
Yeah,
that.
I didn't see that.
I read it, as I understand it from the changes they made, they just said, added the wording to a public road.
Mhm.
There was some, first on terms of the regulations, which we can vote on, doesn't require town meeting. It's just an update, and this was run by, Department of Public Works, just to update the procedures and requirements. Yes, substantively, there were a couple of changes to the one ordinance, Town Ordinance 20, the only change was adding to paragraph 7, which just gives us the authority, the select board, the authority to waive the provisions of this. And 21, yes, absolutely right, Mike, adding town maintained way is a key point to that. Everything else is more operational in nature, and again, adding a paragraph. that the select
Can you
board
go
right.
on to
Now-
Zoom
Why
while
didn't
this
we
is
use the
going
term
on
road?
and invite?
We don't have.
I sent her the
roads per se.
link.
I'll let
You did?
Monica-
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Because I just asked her, I haven't
Public
gotten a
way is-
response.
is-
from her.
is
Yeah, I did send her that link.
Okay,
good.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Yep.
As, because it could be
I haven't seen her.
The street.
a road,
Come
a
in yet,
way, a
though.
street, an avenue.
The boulevard.
Yeah,
Okay,
gulch.
because I just remember that in the past, when people have asked us to dig over their
road.
road,
Well, we use
if
that.
it was a way,
Right now.
we said, no, that's not a public street, that's.
But here I guess town maintain way, capture.
Well, it
captures
also,
it.
it captures sidewalks and roads, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it, I would make a motion to approve it.
Okay, well, here's the thing, now, if we go ahead with this, there are a couple areas where you can see the dumpsters from a town maintained way.
Yeah.
So they'd have to get a waiver for us to
And where are
continue.
those?
The White Mountain Athletic Club, Town Square,
Both
both areas of Town Square. You can see the dumpsters, not talking about the enclosure, but the actual dumpsters
But
themselves.
we can waive that.
This gives us the
And we
authority
can
for 1
grandfather
year.
those in because they're not on the road, or like, the Valley Inn. Not the Valley Inn, the Silver Fox.
Can you see theirs? I have. Oh, well, you can see the enclosure, but if they keep the door closed, that should be it. But we do say, the new paragraph 7 says, Board of Selectmen can waive the requirements with ordinance or related upon a written request, and that the waiver can last for 12 months.
So that's good, and
And
So where are the ones that come through that are visible?
by the back of the hockey arena and the ones down below,
Yeah, both of them are visible from the village.
and those are the ones that apparently get the most complaints, which is what occasioned a lot of this
Okay.
A lot of
And-
these have-
and
Actually,
where's-
you can
and
actually see
White Mountain
the
Athletic Club.
Conference and athletic. club
They're
is
facing-
visible From Valley.
You can see it from Valley Road, you can just see, they
The
don't have
conference center
doors.
one you can see from the road too.
And the conference center.
That's right, that's right. The remedy is simply a door
Oh, a fence in the door.
or a fence. Yeah, in that case, right, but, an enclosure, but.
Yeah.
But then that gets into questions of whether we want to have doors from a
Yeah.
servicing perspective. And that's where we get the authority, or the select board gets the authority to make that waiver and is to move forward with it. And that systematizes and legalizes the issue when anybody comes to complain about being able to see dumpsters in Waterville Valley.
All right, let's take it down a step. What happens if we don't issue a waiver and they refuse to fix
Then they'll be fine.
The according to
the fines?
it's listed in here,
That's all.
yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and that's the other piece that has come out in the discussions is that right now, you don't have the authority to waive anything the way the ordinances are written. And we're not fining, and that's one of the comments we got from the
Right.
solid waste committee was, why aren't you fining these people for not putting the door? And basically,
All right,
because the waivers have
All
been
right.
given whether they're
Wait,
correct.
wait a minute. Can we amend 7
On 21 or 20?
on 20? 21, I think.
21.
21. to Grandfather in. To create a class of grandfather in ones. So it,
And we could, I'm just thinking
I'm
through
just
it.
thinking of the language of how we would do it as to,
What would the goal be?
the goal would be so the athletic club and the conference center doesn't have, and the town square doesn't have to come back every year. And I face a new board that says, no, we're not going to do it. $500. You don't go to the closure.
Put the doors
No,
back
they
on.
have an enclosure, they just took the doors
Yeah.
out because they didn't want to maintain the doors.
And frankly, I think it was better,
Well, after the doors had degraded to the
Right,
point
no,
where
I
our guys
get it.
couldn't open. them,
So all we're really
then
saying is if you don't have doors, you need to put doors on. Or you can
Right.
lower the doors.
Yeah,
Give
yeah.
you a year to put the doors back on.
And if you
Absolutely.
need additional time.
Yeah.
we can-
Okay,
you can
all right, no,
request it.
I can go for that.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
I think the next, if you guys are fine with it, I think the next step would be a public hearing at some point this fall, and then it'll go up in front of the town.
Yeah.
Fashion the appropriate warrant, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot of this work, by the way, was done again by DPW, especially Mr. White. I think it was very helpful.
He went through it. There are a couple of things that he's recommended as far as signage inside
Good, good.
and points of contact being listed on the enclosures, and
Right.
we'll come up with that language. It's very minor
Right, just
stuff, but
minor,
we will,
and there's
we
some
will-
minor grammatical stuff.
yeah, nothing that.
We'll fix that, but Mark and DPW and all pushed along by the chairman of the solid waste.
Yep.
Committee, Mr. Capet.
Okay.
So they all, this is their baby.
Okay.
So are we ready for coalition community?
Yeah, the subcommittees and subcommittees of the legislature have started reviewing the retained bills. Primarily from a coalition community standpoint, the one that has the most potential impact on us is House Bill 504, which changes how the SWEP gets paid. So instead of being paid to the towns, it would be paid directly to the state of New Hampshire. So it would go to DRA, and then they would send it over to the education department to the community. What that would do to us is we would not get to retain our excess SWEP. We'd have to, all of that, instead of coming into our coffers first, it would go to the state, and then they would not give
Give
us
us
that.
back, right? The way it was.
It
Yeah,
would
donor town,
reinstitute
donor
donor
town.
tax.
Yeah.
So we're following that bill very closely. We're kind of trying to end run the reinstitution. There are several other bills that change the formula and other things, but they're not as overt as. So that's really the only one at this point that we have to.
Board concerns and
The one thing I wanted to bring up is a project that I and several other people have been working with Marvin. And it has to do with digitizing and creating an online trail guide for Waterloo Valley. We've been here a long time, so I won't go into all the details, but Marvin's done some excellent work in preparing the ground for this. And it's something we need to discuss as a board, perhaps at the next meeting when we may have in front of us a proposal for the town to provide some support, financial support to move this project forward. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on this. It's been Marvin, myself, AIA, Resort Association, the rec department, Tyler at the rec department is taking the lead in this exploratory effort at this time for the town. It sounds like an excellent project, but it's going to take some birthing to make it happen.
these trails are not covered on all trails.
They are.
or
They are.
So on those particular
Right.
maps, you get a membership and you can download the map.
Yes.
And then when you're out there, even if you're not
Right.
on Wi-Fi or cellular
Correct.
data,
That's
it will show you where you are on
Right.
the trail. So how is this project different than
Marvin-
just using that?
Yes, Marvin has a much grander idea in terms of what you could get from this app or software if you did it on your desktop to involve, flora and fauna and history, as well as the trails themselves. We would
And
also
then
like
a
to have
commercial add-on.
a commercial add-on for restaurants.
Order food. you could
Exactly.
get- You
But-
could get a room.
But you can stop at a certain place and then you can replay, it'd be an audio visual, somebody, Dan Newton or somebody saying on this spot, there was a logging and so forth. And also one of the companies, I think the one that he's most enthralled with, and maybe the one they want to put forward as a good company to go with is what's the name of the company? Anyway, they are the only ones of these companies that actually will create an app, a Waterville Valley Trail app that anybody can download. It'll say Waterville Valley,
Label, it's our own.
our own app.
Yeah.
And then all of that information from our app can be uploaded to
All
all
trails,
trails or
Gaia,
others,
Yeah,
other hiking apps. Marvin's already
Right.
contacted those favorite companies, and they said if we had the content, we could simply upload our content to there, including the audio, visual,
right.
and all of the other stuff. So we'd be multi-platforms, if you will. Which
It's really ambitious.
It is, and I think
and
he's
he's
gonna
doing
come
a lot of
forward.
groundwork.
He
That's
is
the
on
thing.
his
Yeah.
own. I think he's gonna come forward to the board with a proposal, and part of which will be requesting financial assistance, to move this forward. We're talking initially, I think, in the thousands, and maybe to start, if we want to go forward with this, but it's on him, and we've asked Tyler to help him, to
Put a budget.
put a budget together and tell us exactly what it is they want from us, from the select board, so. And the other, just as a side, other part of this, I mean, Marvin is running for charity, and he's asked if the town will consider again providing him with some,
350.
I think that was it.
I will support Marvin, but I don't think the town should support individuals. For these charity runs and all this.
What's the charity run for? Huh?
It's an MS microphone.
Yeah.
Is it up here?
No, it's in
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
It's just, I know Marvin well, and I appreciate what he does, but if
Yeah.
we honor him, we have to honor everybody else who comes in.
Yeah, I don't think you need to do it. I think
Right.
he's gonna get that.
Yeah.
He's only got 350 left.
Yeah, no, it's, I'm sure we would, because our company would like, but as a town, I think that's a precedent. Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Correspondence.
Yeah, we received 2 responses back, Counselor Kenny and our rep on hand responded. They responded to that the last time.
The
Thank
same
you for
person
keeping
might
an eye
get
on
most
it.
responsive.
Yeah, thank you very much. We got your,
That was the exact
Letter.
same language. Thank you for keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, it was.
so, and then,
Doesn't sound good though.
huh?
I didn't get good vibes.
No.
from you, Kenny,
It's still in the process, but what we're hoping now, you want to talk about the chief, what you've heard?
Yeah, I mostly just rumors and stuff about potentially, rendering. So,
Yeah, carving it out.
carving it out as part of that. There is an executive board meeting coming up in the next week that I will attend and try to get. So, we'll make it come.
So that it's not to provide your right to governor's office in really pushing, getting rid of this property, so.
And not doing anything to support.
Well, not yet,
Yeah.
definitely. not.
We also have an email from Mr. Myrick.
This was the one that came in right as we were having the previous meeting. So, or came in right after. So I just put it in here so that I could get your input on this.
Well, my input is that the town does not pay for citizens who have made changes to property that is not theirs without the town's permission. So, $150 is on Tom or his association as far as I'm concerned. He said $150.
$150.
Oh, he only wanted 150.
It was only 150 for the part that is on the lower section of Lost.
I see.
Right.
The rest is.
Again, I just don't think it's
Okay.
I understand.
good. Okay.
I agree with mine.
And then the right to know request, I just wanted to.
Oh my God, who is this person?
And what does he want?
I wonder if it's a political operative
It is.
trying to
It
find
is.
out.
It happened to many towns in the state.
The same
It
request
also,
Yeah.
same request, and
to the county.
it's also happened to the county and to the police departments.
The question is, what, I think it would cost them our town budget to produce these documents.
Well,
We got
not quite that much, but yes, it will be extensive, and that is exactly what we're communicating
Yeah.
back to him. We're also trying to get him, because this is so broad, we're trying to get the request down to specific timeframes or specific projects or specific situations, so we're
I wasn't
trying,
aware we had anything to do with RIP Energy, Kenya, or Bermuda, or Kenya.
well,
I think those are probably holding up.
they
Is that
are,
what it is?
well, yeah, that's the
But my
problem.
thought
with
is,
this request
we are more than willing to comply, but the cost associated with it will be borne by you and give them an idea of how much an hour it will be, and we'll have to hire additional help to do it.
Maybe they want to cut it back, or he wants to. cut it
And
back.
I believe under the right to know law, you can charge them
Oh,
for the
yes,
cost that it takes.
Yes, you can
Not-
charge them copying fees,
Only copying fees, not.
assembly
staff.
fees.
So we would not, like, if we had to assign someone to do this for months,
Mhm.
we could
We
not
couldn't
charge them the first month.
So this is over with our legal counsel right now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the
And
Chiefs
we have a very
Association.
expensive copier, by the way.
Yeah,
Well, that's exactly it.
Well, we typically charge $30 for a report, That's typically up to 12 pages,
Mhm,
and then it's $30 an hour after that
mhm.
for anything. But that's typically for
That's research and compiling
any
information. What
information.
he's asking is just copies of these things.
And we also do not have to copy everything. We could, like, he asked for all of the plans for any projects that those companies have done. We could bring all of those down here
And say, here's.
and
how
say,
many.
here's, and
I'll look
no,
at
that
No.
they bring their own copy.
Or we just say,
Bring their own.
45 cents a copy, we'll start the meeting with this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And we don't,
I've had to do that in Massachusetts in certain places, where I've gone to the state, and it's just,
well, we did,
here's the file. this
we
is what-
did that for the Stone Property Management thing. They
Mhm.
copied stuff for weeks.
Right.
And,
And yet we still have no idea what this is.
well,
Okay.
we also don't have to create anything that doesn't presently exist in the format that it is in. So you don't have to pile and make a report to deliver that.
we
Yeah.
could give him our audit information, all of the financial reports, which would include what he has
Mhm.
requested, and then just give him that data and we can do
But
it.
most of the stuff is from the state. The only thing we could give him is maybe the milk permit for the restaurant.
Mm.
You know, if they needed a milk permit or an occupancy permit, that's all we
Well,
got.
our concern is he's asking for all incident reports.
right.
And he lists every address for the resort. Well, that's 90% of our calls for service ever have been
Have
at
to do
those,
with the resort.
have to do with the resort.
Yeah. Oh, no,
Or a resort property, so it's basically saying, give me everything you've ever done.
Yeah.
Which is, I would say, unreasonable.
Yeah.
So we'll try to get him to narrow this, the timeframe.
And under freedom of information, we have to comply.
Well,
We do.
Yeah.
Uh,
But the compliance is, here are our files, we will pull out this box and you can go through. But then he can't look at anything other than what he's going through.
Well,
That's what- that's
our
what it's like.
problem is we have time, because we could give them those reports, but we have to spend time redacting.
No, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and just the redaction of time alone.
And we also make some comment in here about if they're redacted, I request that
Why
you
would
state
it
the
be redacted?
specific legal or factual grounds for withholding, yeah. Yeah, okay. So. Alrighty, so are we ready to go into non-public? Okay, at 12:45, we're gonna go into non-public. Motion to do so?
I will make a motion to go into non-public.